so many things in life, like especially with our messy human brains, is we get things all confused. We conflate issues, we conflate feelings, we conflate problems all the time, everywhere. And so building a muscle and a practice of like really trying to pull apart and unbundle the things of any issue we're talking about, separating the emotional or the people issue from the actual conflict of interest or the conflict of incentives from the actual thing that went wrong in the business. Like there may be very different things that have gone right or gone wrong that are conflating and confusing the problem that we're working on. Is like being able to take any situation and try to break it down into the discrete separate parts so you can solve them individually, because they may have very different solutions, rather than just trying to brute force, one one solution to a complex problem.
Aaron, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this.
Always a pleasure talking to you. Always like one of those conversations you can have for more hours than the time permits. So anyhow, Aaron, what is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
The one away moment. I have a particular one that is started my career and set me off on this journey from basically my entire adult life. But it's such it really is that like, I think the epitome of, we've talked about these one away moments, because it so easily could have just not happened at all. It was just this, an inspired moment of reaching out to somebody or asking a question, or this tiny little butterfly effect moment that domino affected into, completely life-changing for me. But it was, when I was in college, I'd gone through, I got to a point where I wanted to go into investing and into the finance world. And after giving up on physics and engineering and the things I was going to do, and deciding I need to give into my love of business and investing. And but I had some internships and they didn't come and turn into anything. And so I was a senior in college that was just out of options and going to graduate, looking into the abyss. And I had a year of grad school coming up. So I had a summer to kill before then. And then of course was hoping to then get something after that in finance to start my career. But I had been striking out on every internship, every job application that spring of my senior year, and just getting more increasingly concerned and anxious. And it's frustrating because I thought I had a lot of potential and I'd done really well, and I was very excited to go out and to kick butt in the business world, but just no opportunities were like coming through. And so the moment was, I was on this student investment club where we were presenting to the board of trustees, and so I'd met a couple of them, and after the spring board meeting, I ran into one of the board members in the lunchroom after our meeting, and I just kind of randomly said, "Hey, do you want to get lunch sometime? I would just love to get your advice on what I should do." And of course he said, "Yeah, sure." And we got together, and I told him all my story, what I was looking to do, and what I was interested in. And he said, "I know this guy in Seattle. I don't really know what he does. I know he's an investor. He has some kind of little business, but I just have a feeling that you guys would get along. Like I just think that he'll like you and that you'll connect. So I'll introduce you, and who knows what it will become of it." And that became a phone call with this guy, which turned into a summer internship, which turned into now 12 years later, have really been the only job I've ever had, is working for this guy, Eric Anderson, who I was introduced to. He had this firm called West River Group, which at the time was 3 people, and they had a small venture investing business, but had just made a big investment in a company called TopGolf, which was just about to take off like a rocket ship. And I came in right at that time to become chief of staff and work on TopGolf for 6-7 years while it was scaling like crazy, and then be part of the growth of West River Group as we raised capital. We made more investments and did all these things. And starting from 22 years old, got to be, mentored by this guy Eric, who's become like my partner and like a father figure, and everything I know about business in the world and in my career, essentially I have learned from him and through working together. And it was all because of this one moment that I just happened to grab this guy, and then he happened to have this idea of a random person in Seattle that he just thought our personalities would connect. And it's crazy to think of like how influential and on my life, my whole career and my work and learning and everything since the day I graduated college has been basically driven by this mentor and boss that was coming from just this one little moment that could have easily not happened.
Personally, I just want to share, I think a lot of the people they look for mentors when they're younger. They don't know how to find them, or they don't know who's a good fit for their own life. So I'm curious, or if they do find someone who's good for them, they don't know how to be a value to that person and let that person be a value to them. So I'm curious. I have two questions that are based off one another. The first question is what was it about Eric that you were like, yeah, I'm going to open up my deck of cards and show this person who I am so that he can guide me and let him guide me? Like, what was it about him that said, I'm going to follow this guy? Second question is he clearly saw something in you. And I'm curious what you think he saw in Aaron to say, I'm going to take this guy on a journey.
That is a great question. Honestly, I think the answer is probably pretty similar to both. Like, I think it kind of goes both ways, because basically it's a combination of like, capability and values, right? So what I saw in him and or had in him was somebody who he was so experienced, but also just naturally talented and brilliant. I mean, the guy's, I describe Eric as like, he's naturally a creative, like a creative visionary who learned engineering at Stanford and finance at Goldman Sachs, and then went on to like try and fail building more companies than I will probably ever. And so he is somebody that, as much as I grow and have continued to grow, he's always so many steps ahead of me. It's like, there's so much to learn. I think there's probably a lot of people I could have started working for and outgrown fairly quickly. And it was very clear to me very, very early on, like, oh, I'm not going to outgrow this guy anytime soon, if ever. So one is just the depth of experience and intellect that he had that I knew I wanted to be around. And then two is the values, like the alignment of values and how he treated me and what I knew what he believed in and the things he valued, was somebody that I wanted to work for. And I think vice versa, he saw in me somebody that, while I thought I had all the answers already at 22 and was probably confident and maybe arrogant, and he saw that there was raw talent, obviously, like, okay, at least there's some raw clay here that I can work with and I can mold, at least, enough that it can be useful for a while. And I think he saw values that he and a DNA that aligned with his values, like somebody who loved learning, who had integrity and was going to be honest and have humility, that he could trust not to embarrass the family, and that we could have fun we could have fun working and thinking together. So, and that's, I think because of those things are true in both directions, like we really respect each other's, capability and talent, intellect and experience, and have alignment of very deep alignment of values. That makes for easily a very rich long-term partnership.
That's really beautiful. I really resonate with, I don't resonate with coming out of school thinking I knew everything. I do resonate with raw talent and letting people shape that. And it's cool that you saw him as a portal of growth. You saw him as somebody who is an expansive professional, and I'm sure personal person to follow in a way that you want to be at a point to outgrow somebody that could keep teaching you. So on that subject, I'm curious, what do you think, you said he's acquired and started and invested in more companies than you might ever do, but what are the things, let's just say at a tactical level or at a strategic level or just life lessons, right? That have been, do you think have been passed down to you that they're ingrained when you wake up in the morning, like what he's taught you is coming, how you make decisions, how you live, who the person Aaron is today?
Well, I think that's what actually makes it so fun working together, and why we continue enjoying it so much is we, more so him and now me, by learning from him, really see the world as, we try to think of the world in terms of like principles and models, and spend a lot of time thinking about, in any situation, what are the broader lessons or applicable principles. And so an example is the lens of, like, the world is full of volatility, right? There's so much uncertainty in the world, and trying to fight that is like fighting gravity. So in our businesses and our lives, you shouldn't, there's a lot of effort expended trying to reduce volatility or reduce uncertainty and constrain it or fight against it. And what I've learned from him is not so much to try to really tightly like get rid of volatility, but instead build yourself and build your business and your systems in more of an anti-fragile kind of way to just be able to endure or take advantage of volatility, right? And so, and that also means seeing the world not in fixed terms and predictive sort of terms, but in probabilistic terms. So there's this concept called expected value in probability. If you take probability 101, you learn this, which is like, if you have a 50% chance of winning $100 or 100% chance of winning $50, those are actually equivalent. Like those are the same thing. You should be indifferent between those two choices. And that's a very simple example, but like when we look at our businesses or investing or look at the world, you have to use this probabilistic lens and think about expected value. So it's like an opportunity, a 1% chance of, on a small percentage or probability of a very big number might be more valuable than like a big percentage chance of certainty on a small number, right? And this is kind of the venture capital game, especially where we're investing in startups and trying to build companies and things. It's like you have to think about, the size of the opportunity and the probability of it happening, and you have to kind of do that for everything to actually be able to compare apples to apples when you're looking at opportunities. And so, and because of that, like developing options, whether options for things to invest in or optionality in your personal life or building optionality into your business that you're operating, optionality itself is really valuable, even if you never execute on those options. having optionality and choices is intrinsically valuable itself, which is explicitly illustrated and true, like in the world of finance, when you buy options on stocks, like if you buy stock, options in the market, you pay a premium just for the value of the option, on top of, if the option's in the money, you pay for however much you're already in the money, but then you also pay a premium for just the right to potentially execute on that option. And the more time you have, the more premium, the more expensive that is. So this concept is explicitly illustrated in financial markets, the fact that options themselves have value, but it's also true in life outside of finance, just in general, right? And so that's something that he's taught me, and is a lens that through which you can't help but see the world that way when you wake up every day. Once you have this lens of like the options themselves, and building optionality is valuable. And especially because we just live in this uncertain world, right? Another thing that we talk about a lot is just unbundling problems and situations and things into their component parts. And so many things in life, like especially with our messy human brains, is we get things all confused. We conflate issues, we conflate feelings, we conflate problems all the time, everywhere. And so building a muscle and a practice of like really trying to pull apart and unbundle the things of any issue we're talking about, like separating the emotional or the people issue from the actual conflict of interest or the conflict of incentives from the actual, thing that went wrong in the business. Like there may be very different things that have gone right or gone wrong that are conflating and confusing the problem that we're working on. And so always being in the habit, and we do this in personal life and in business, is like being able to take any situation and try to break it down into the discrete separate parts so you can solve them individually, because they may have very different solutions, rather than just trying to brute force, one solution to a complex problem. So those are just a couple of, I know I could go on for a whole hour about, life lessons.
If there's anything else that's screaming at you, I feel like I'm learning how to relive my life. So, I'll soak in whatever else you got.
Yeah. We gave we actually have a presentation that we give to graduating seniors or incoming classes of like analysts at certain businesses, where we've occasionally been invited to give keynotes or present to young people. Oftentimes Eric, sometimes the two of us together, because it's a fun dynamic of like illustrating what a great mentor and mentee partnership actually can look like in terms of growth and learning and everything. But it's really fun, and it's been an experiment for both of us, right? I'm the person, he's never had somebody that like me that worked for him as long as I have in this capacity. And I, of course, have never had any other boss but him. And so I think it's kind of a unique relationship for both of us it's been really rewarding. And so, yeah, there's a lot. I think another lens that we developed that we kind of can't help but use all the time once you see it is this idea of principle and preference. And so the difference is like making decisions out of principle versus making decisions out of preference is like, in a way, it's kind of like preference would be like, I just want to win the game at whatever the cost. Like I want to win because I'm putting myself first. Versus the principle decision would say, no, I want whoever is best should win the game, right? I just want to make a fair game, and then may the best man win, whether that's me or whether that's somebody else. And so there's all these places in business, and you see this in politics and just in the world, where so many people are operating on preference all the time, not actually on principle. And what does that look like? It's like, okay, you're going to have one opinion. You're going to have a particular opinion about the way things should be when it suits you. And then if all of a sudden you're on the other side of an issue, you change your opinion and be like, oh no, the world shouldn't work that way. It's like, okay, but you thought it should work that way when it suited you. So you don't really believe in any sort of principle. You just want the world to adapt to whatever suits, whatever is going to benefit you at the time. Right. And so that's hard to, because a lot of the world works that way without actually realizing it explicitly. And I spend a lot of time thinking about, and I'm in my teams and life in general, of like, are we operating on principle or on preference? And then of course there's a whole rabbit hole, and the discussion that we had is like, what are the principles? Of course, like, how do you even agree what the right principles are, or all those kind of things. But at least that's a more interesting conversation than just like, oh, we're just fighting because I want to win, and I just want the best outcome for me, regardless of whether it's fair or whether it's good for anybody else.
Pretty good. I'm waiting for the book. And just to recap, what I'm hearing is some of these principles are expected value. Based on expected value, it's good to have optionality. Optionality is good in finance, but it's also good in life. How you think about problem solving and breaking things in discrete parts, and preference versus principle, and grounding yourself in what you believe. So I'm sure if you give me 4 or 5 more, it'd be pretty amazing. But I think those are very strong pillars of conversation. I get the impression that he is very thoughtful, like you, but disciplined and rational in decision making, and maybe not too much chaos.
It can be a little chaotic, when you live your life with the lens of like developing options is valuable.
That's true.
Then what ends up happening is you're developing options all the time, which can look like just constantly coming up with new opportunities and chasing shiny objects or developing shiny objects. And but it's a different, the action and the value of developing optionality is a different activity than execution, right? And so they shouldn't be confused, which is important, because most of the people in businesses, their job is not developing options, their job is execution. Because you can develop all kinds of options, and that has value, but there's a point where you are going to actually execute on certain options. You're going to say, oh, we're going to do this deal, or we're going to start this new product or this business line. And once you do that, it's not about optionality anymore, it's about execution, right? And so that's where you actually need to make a clear designation of like, what are we doing right now, and which activity are we doing? There's very few people who should be doing both, right? Like the CEO of the company is a particularly difficult job, because you are both responsible for the execution as well as essentially the manager of the option portfolio of all the things in front of you. And you'll have most of the company is execution, but then you'll have discrete teams. Like, this is what a corporate development team does in a company, or like an innovation unit or strategy. Sometimes it's like their job isn't actually operating and executing the business. Their job is developing new options, right? But as the CEO and I guess the board, to some extent, is both overseeing and managing the portfolio of optionality for the company, as well as leading the execution. And some gravitate to one or the other. Like, if you have a really strong COO or execution team, then you can be less focused on direct execution and more focused on looking forward and developing optionality for the company. Some CEOs are much more execution focused, and they're really more like glorified COOs. If they're not thinking about option creation and capital allocation and those kind of things. But they're important. They're important to unbundle and recognize not everything is options. Some things are execution, and execution is really important.
2 things. One, I feel like there's like a framework in here for developing a life methodology, and within that life methodology, there's a whole component to business. And I'm at a podcast like this where it's felt like an education, like with a professorship. Like, this is very cool. I am like just waiting for you to just post your flag at like Stanford on like developing your like life and business, mission.
I don't know about that.
Where are you at?
We always say it's work in practice and work in progress.
No, look, I'm half kidding, but it's cool. So we've talked about his impact on you, your impact on him. We've talked about the things that you've learned. We've talked about this is one person you followed for so many years, and it's still fun. So my question to you is, from TopGolf to the things you're doing at Singularity to other ventures, like when you look, let's just say you guys, let's say you were working together the next 10 years or another 15 years. What do you think? I mean, it seems like you're using principles to drive decision making, but what do you think is on that roadmap of maybe something that you would like to explore? If we're talking options development, what are options that we want to develop in this maybe next 10 years of this relationship that you would see as fun to look into and potentially execute on?
Well, it's an interesting, it is an interesting period of time because he is 68 now. And so he has a lot of energy. He's not going anywhere soon, I think. But we're having to think about, okay, what does the future of our business look like in a post Eric world? And like, for all I know, he's probably going to be working until he drops dead at 120, right? So but when you get to close to 70, like we have to think about these things. And so I think it looks like going from just like this is our status quo, we're working together and we're learning together and building things together, to the next arc looks like, well, what does sort of succession look like, right? What is the next phase of that relationship where I'm assuming I'm going to stay around and grow, continue on the legacy of what we've been doing, whether that's continuing to grow Singularity University, which I'm doing right now, or West River Group, which was our investment firm, taking that on or wanting to grow that. It's a little bit of thinking about that, and then also thinking about who am I as a leader independent of him?
Yeah.
Right? Who am I as a person and as a leader? Because it's going to be different, like we get along and we have fun together and I've learned a ton from him, but we also are very different leaders. Like he's extremely optimistic. He's like, I almost say delusionally optimistic sometimes. And he has no problem thinking really big. Like he's a visionary and he connects dots and crazy ideas like you've never seen before. And that makes him a great leader people want to follow. But he's a vision, mostly he's a option creation visionary kind of leader. I'm a lot more tactical. I'm a bit more down to earth. I am not always as optimistic as he is. I think it's important for any leader. You do have to have some element of optimism. Otherwise, you're not probably going to be leading anybody anywhere, really. But I think it's figuring out what does my leadership look like independently, and what do I want to spend, the prime years of my life working on, which is an open question. The world is changing really fast right now, and the venture capital world and capital markets are changing, and things I'm excited about are like deep tech, energy related, biology related, hardware, robotics related things that aren't going to be immediately eaten by AI, but are going to be empowered by AI and computing, and are going to make life better for a lot of people. So that's what I'm excited about. But it is going to be, the next decade is a transitional decade. And then the one following that is basically going to be me kind of leading and executing on my own, I'm assuming. But 10 years is a long time.
Totally. Really can grasp and understand visionary leader versus execution oriented leader, optimism versus some nice realism. I totally can appreciate that. And also one thing that, just to reflect back to you too, that I think very interesting, you said you were pulled into business in a way, and not that you ignored your engineering and other areas of interest, but it's almost, you've built such a good foundation of knowledge and business operating principles that it seems like with where the world's going, you can venture back into some of these interests.
Yeah.
Get sense of how do you build and manage a scalable operation. So I don't know, that sounds very exciting. And
the weight of opportunity, my friend, the weight of unlimited opportunity is great and oppressive sometimes.
Totally. Yeah, a lot of options for sure, a lot of bets to make. And it's been amazing. I know we have 4 minutes left.
I know, never enough time.
Never enough time. What is?
I can come back.
What's? Yeah, you can. You can always come back. What's one thing I should be asking you about, or you should be telling me about that we have not addressed as we close out today?
The thing that immediately comes to mind is about my daughter.
Congratulations.
That just came in 3 months ago. Had our first kid, my first daughter, and the reason I want to say, I think the reason I'm thinking that is because I was hesitant about having kids. I always wanted to be a dad, and I was excited about it. But then at the same time, like once it got close to it, it's like, okay, losing my autonomy in some way, selfishly. Of course, I was hesitant in a very selfish way, and also sort of a fearful way about the world we're living in and not knowing where the world is going and how fast it's changing. And I was hesitant, but it's something I committed to, and then we decided, we're going to do it. And as soon as she came out and I held her for the first time and saw her, it's like any hesitation or fear that I had just disappeared, like almost immediately. Just almost immediately. I'm just so in love with her, and made me see the world in a whole different way. And it's really hard to describe. And I get now when people say that, like, it's hard to describe what it feels like and how it changes you. But I say that because a lot of my friends and peers that are in our similar place, I think, are struggling with the same thing that I was. And so the message that's on my heart right now to share is like, it's so worth it. And the best thing we can do is good people bringing more good people into the world and being thoughtful and dedicated parents. And it's just so awesome. So if you're on the fence, if you have, thinking about having kids, like, it's awesome. Do it. You won't regret it.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know why that was on my mind right now, but it's just maybe because she's crying in the other room, but it's what came out.
And dude, I think it's beautiful, man. I remember before she was born, we were having dinner and you were telling me about it, and I was so excited for you. I mean, I think some people are just built as good parents and fathers, and obviously it takes work and it's a job, but I can totally see you crushing dad life and being
it is a huge responsibility. So don't take it lightly, but it's pretty awesome. It's worthwhile work.
No. Well, Aaron, this is a pleasure. Where can people find you as we wrap up here? Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. I wish we had more time. And you can find me at I'm at Singularity. You can find me at Aaron Vaccaro on Instagram, or just at su.org. Come find us.
Easy. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, dude. Good to see you.